Good afternoon all. My name is Kilmo Madzivadondo and I'm going to present my thesis project work entitled Binary-Based Error Correcting Codes Based on the Properties of the Cycling Parity Check Matrix. But before I proceed, I wish to thank my thesis supervisors, Dr. Sina Vavi and Dr. Ewan Chan, and my thesis coordinator, Ms. Mayam Yonkman, for their sterling support and guidance throughout the thesis project work this past semester. Thesis content, I'll briefly go through the thesis project work contents, which are shown on this slide. Introduction, motivation for the thesis project work, aims of thesis project work, codes for correcting base errors, yes they are, though inefficient, development of an algorithm, determination of cycling parity check polynomial, checks, and the corresponding n values. I'll elaborate on that in a few slides time. Conclusions, and that will lead us to the future endeavors on the thesis project work. This is basically a block diagram of a general communication system. Nothing much to say about that. Motivation for the thesis. Although the importance of base errors in terms of the degree or extent of impact on the transmission systems cannot be overemphasized, very little research in this field of error coding designed to find codes that effectively correct base errors has been undertaken. Base errors are amongst the most important types of channel errors because they affect a number of or sequence of symbols. Obviously, it is easier to design and implement a random bit error correction than the base error correction, because a code will have the maximum base error correcting capability if the allocated length of the correction best is set greater than the length of the error pattern. So that is the challenge for this thesis project work, because obviously it is difficult to find a code that will, in the first instance, detect and the second instance correct chunks of binary bits that have been either wiped out completely or drastically or negatively impacted on. Therefore, the aims of the project work, as I have outlined, derive or find the codes, which are binary cycling codes with maximum base error correcting capability, and investigating the properties of cycling parity check matrix in order to attain our thesis goal. So codes sought after should have a rate greater than 0.28. So rate is just k over n. Why is that important? Because lower codes will mean that we will be wasting bandwidth, as the rate is nothing but a ratio of information bits transmitted over total number of bits transmitted per code. We'll briefly look at the current or existing error or base correcting codes, which are basically linear block codes designed to correct base with specific length. Reed-Solomon, the non-binary low density parity check, a little bit efficient, but they have problems when we have large and sparse low density parity matrix in the implementation. Fire codes, not very efficient. BCH codes, the Bose, Ray, Chowdhury, and Hawk and Quinn, they are binary but not efficient in base error correction. Circulant parity check matrix-based cyclic codes. This is the type of the code that this thesis project work focuses on, investigates, in order to obtain maximum base error correcting codes, and also with high performance on random error correction. So this project work aims at improving on predecessor research work, which has shown that optimal base error correcting codes with high performance in random error correction could be achieved either with interleaving or with computer search. So that leaves us to the development of an algorithm for construction of optimum base error correcting cyclic codes, well, based on composing parity check polynomials of cyclic parity cyclic codes, computer search, and this should have rates of between 0.28 and 0.47 for the reasons I've outlined before. And further investigation of some of the cyclic codes show minimum weight that could be used for correcting random errors too. Therefore, multiple base errors and random errors could be corrected when new schemes of such cyclic codes products derived from these codes are employed. So on the next slide we have the maximum length of base correctable block codes, which is given by an equation shown there. It's called Rager bound equation, and followed by the parity check matrix of NK. Circulant parity check matrix can be divided into two matrices. The first matrix, n minus k by n, and the second, which is k by n. The first matrix will bear n minus k minus 1 cyclic shifts, and then the second matrix will just continue the cyclic shifting of the first matrix, is shown in the next slide. Now in this slide, like I've said, it shows the second submatrix, which in turn is subdivided into submatrices, which I've shown there is NZ1, NZ2, NZ3, and NZ4, corresponding to submatrix 1, 2, 3, and 4 respectively. And I've also shown the columns, yellow, orange, gray, and brown, and these are used for the computation of the maximum zero span. Submatrix will give the ultimate a zero span. Well, I will omit, in the interest of time, the stages that are employed to come up with the maximum zero span. But basically the maximum zero span is the number of zeros that we have between two ones of a row. For instance, in the first row, now supposing this number of zeros, or the maximum zero, is k, it will imply that we have 2 to the power k different codes that we can relate for our circulant parity check matrix. And it doesn't mean that all these codes will be suitable for our computation requirements. Some of them will be, but most will not be. So that leads us to the computation of the parity check matrix here. We write a script code, matter script, and with the knowledge that the first and last coefficients of our parity check polynomial should be 1, is shown in this slide. The output of the MATLAB script shown also on this slide for the values of hx and n values, and these are written into separate files for further computations. So in conclusion, from the thesis work project done thus far, it can be concluded that it is possible to find cyclic parity check cyclic codes with high or maximum base error correcting capability to outperform currently employed base error correcting codes. Some codes thus far found will be used to correct random errors and also outperform currently random error correction codes. And it leads us to the future endeavors, which, from what I have discussed thus far, will be advanced, obtain parity check matrix codes with their corresponding n values, and these codes will be using to correct base error in transmission and storage media. These also codes will outperform the currently employed base error correcting and random error correcting codes. That brings us to the end of this presentation, and I thank you